Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 36 of Untold Evidence. In the open steppe of southern Russia, roughly 100 kilometers east of the city of Volgograd, there is a military rocket testing range called Kapustin Yar. It opened in 1946. For the most of the Soviet period, its name did not appear on any official map. Soviet citizens were not permitted to discuss it publicly. Foreign intelligence services referred to it as a declassified American CIA documents as a denied area. Within the unofficial UFO research community, the Russian-speaking one and later the English-speaking one, Kapustin Yar acquired a different name. It became known as the Russian Roswell. The verified facts first. Kapustin Yar was from 1946 onwards the Soviet Union's first dedicated long-range missile testing facility. The first Soviet liquid-fueled rocket, the R-1, which was itself a Soviet copy of the German V-2, was launched from Kapustin Yar in October 1947. In the decades that followed, the site hosted Soviet missile testing, Cosmo training, and a constellation of secondary research institutes. This part of the story is not contested. The base exists, the base was secret, the base was real. The CIA, in declassified document now in the United States National Archive, identified Kapustin Yar as one of the most heavily guarded sites in the Soviet Union. Photo reconnaissance flights, including in the 1950s American U-2 missions, specifically targeted this area. Kapustin Yar's Soviet code designation was Site Number 1. The UFO connection begins with an event reported to have occurred on the 19th of June 1948. According to claims that emerged in Russian language UFO literature from the 1980s and 1990s onwards, a silver, cigar-shaped object was detected approaching the site's airspace. A Soviet MiG-15 fighter, although a number of sources actually place the incident at a date when the MiG-15 were not yet available, was reported to have scrambled to intercept. Already in the timeline you can see that why Western researchers have had to be careful with this case. The pilot, in some versions of the account, was named Apraskin. In other versions, no name is given. What is reported, consistently, is that the pilot was instructed to fire on the object. The pilot then did so. The object responded with what was described as a beam of light or energy. The aircraft crashed, but the pilot survived. That is the legend. We'll return to whether any of this is verifiable in a moment. Here is what can actually be sourced. A KGB-era document, declassified in 1991 in the immediate aftermath of the Soviet collapse, referred in passing to a body of accumulated UFO reports from the Soviet military airspace going back to the late 1940s. So the document is real, it is in the archives. It does not, however, specifically describe Kapustin Yar's shootdown. In 1996, the Russian Ministry of Defense released a partial archive of accumulated Soviet UFO reports. Some entries reference the site. None described a 1948 shootdown. Most of the detail of the 1948 incident derives from later Russian language books, particularly the work of Boris Sokolov and the late Vladimir Ashaza, both of whom have been credited as serious researchers and criticised as embellishers, depending on which scholar you ask. Now, I want to be very clear about this. The document existence of the UFO files in the Soviet military archives is real. The claim of a specific shootdown in 1948 is poorly sourced. So why is this shootout a legend? How has it survived? Why has it survived? So 3 reasons. The first, the base was, until the 1990s, genuinely classified. Independent verification of any incident there was, by definition, extremely difficult. Number 2, the post-Soviet government has, on occasion, acknowledged the existence of historical UFO investigations without releasing the underlying files, a theme that is consistent with most of the modern world. 3, in 1991, retired Soviet Air Force General Igor Maltsev published a list of UFO encounters that included incidents in the same regions, in the same decades. The list lent retroactive credibility to claims that had previously been dismissed. When secrecy meets selective knowledge, this is where legend fills the gap, a problem that recurs over and over again in UFO research and UFO speculation, one of the huge reasons why we need some formal declassification. Here is the case for taking the Kapustin Yar narrative with caution. Most of the specific claims about the 1948 incident are sourced together with Russian language authors, writing decades after the event without primary documentary evidence. Some of the technical details, the types of aircraft scrambled, for instance, do not match the actual equipment available at the time in June 1948. Soviet-era UFO claims were also, in some cases, deliberately fabricated. They were in an arms race and they were in the Cold War, rivaling America for superior tech. In one example, George Knapp described in his September 2025 Congress testimony, the United States Air Force in the early Cold War is reported to have planted UFO disinformation in region bars near Area 51, specifically to obscure tests of classified aircraft. There is no clear reason the Soviet Union would not have done the same. It was a missile testing site. UFO sightings around a missile testing range are normal. This is what happens. But what is being tested? A Soviet citizen who saw a strange object in the sky over Volgograd in 1948 was significantly more likely to be seeing an experimental missile, a high-altitude balloon, or a copy or captured German design than anything else. So here's where this event actually sits. It is real, it's documented, and it's heavily classified Soviet military installation with 70 plus years of unbroken secrecy. It's associated with a body of UFO reports, some of which are documented in Soviet archives, some of which appear only in later Russian books with limited primary sourcing. The most famous specific claim in 1948 shootdown is on closer inspection, difficult to verify. What remains is still a structural question. The Soviet Union, and now the Russian Federation, have for the better part of a century operated a military installation that the public is not allowed to look at. Whether that installation has, in addition to its publicly known missile program, also processed as unusual aerial objects is something we cannot, in the absence of declassified primary resources, verify in either direction. The phrase Russian Roswell suggests parallel to the Roswell, New Mexico site, another UFO claim associated with classified American military site, and one which the United States Air Force, in multiple official statements, attributed to Project Mogul, a high-altitude balloon program. The Roswell case has had decades of investigation in a relatively open society. The Kapustin Yar case, well, it's not. That asymmetry, more than any specific shootdown claim, is why the story persists. Names matter, records matter. If you found this episode enjoyable, please drop a subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.